Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Thought Leaders. I'm your host, Chris Shang. We bring in different types of leaders from all areas of expertise. Today, we've got Andrew Petcash, who's the founder of Profluence. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrew.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, of course, man. Tell us a little bit about Profluence.
Yeah, Profluence is a media brand, a community, and an investment vehicle sitting at the intersection of sports, tech, and media.
Interesting. And what kind of companies are you guys working with?
Yeah, so we in our community, it's sort of we believe an evolved incubator. So we have a lot of earlier stage companies, either just starting or getting going a little bit of traction. And then once you hit certain benchmarks, we can invest into the sports tech companies. So we have a handful there. We've made 9 investments thus far, and then we have a few teams and leagues, which I'm sure we'll get deeper into today, of how that asset class has really taken off over the last few years. So looking in the emerging areas, we have a creator league, a high school football league, a soccer team professionally in the U.S. So those are the two areas we invest in, and then have the media and the community as well to create this flywheel effect across the ecosystem.
Super interesting. Very interesting business model. Before we talk about how you got into that, let's just talk about, your background, right? So come from a sports background, been an entrepreneur a few times, it seems like, and then got into investments. And so this seems to be kind of like a merging of all these different worlds together. So talk us through like those previous iterations of your career that led to you starting Profluence.
So both my parents are entrepreneurs, so it's in the blood. I think you see that a lot. So, seeing the ups and downs, you get a feel for it, and it becomes just a part of your blood, like I said. So I had selling shoes in fourth, fifth grade, selling jerseys, YouTube channels, had the whole grass cutting, ice shoveling, did the whole 9 yards. And then obviously through basketball, that took up a lot of time. Had the chance to play in college. And when I was there, 2020, California legalized paying college athletes. And so when I looked at the space, I was like, this might be my first real big opportunity in an area I'm familiar with, which is sports, college sports, recruiting, NIL, getting paid, marketing. And so I knew there was a chance it goes federally legal. So the first, we'll call those were all, businesses. We'll just call those more side hustles. The first real thing I built was it was called College Athlete Insight, and it was very similar to what Profluence, the media side, is today, of having the podcast, having newsletters, having articles. I wrote an ebook around it. We had affiliate, and we had all kinds of stuff all around this new college sports recruiting landscape. So transfer portal, which is going crazy, and name, image, and likeness, NIL, getting paid. And then July 2021, it federally got legalized. And so my hypothesis was true. And then all the major media brands and companies that wanted to enter the space and have this distribution arm, I had built something that had great SEO, had great socials. And so I was able to go through, and I had a bunch of offers from very well-known companies, but the best one was from a more mid-stage one in Texas. So I went through that acqui-hire, which was cool to take something from 0 to 1. It was nothing crazy, but a great learning experience, a little influx. Took some of that cash while I was at the sports tech company, really started to see an even bigger gap, which was sports becoming this true asset class, where now teams and leagues were getting scooped up by private equity, and then just even the ecosystem around the technology and how it expands into many other adjacent verticals. We always say sports is a wedge to so many other things: creator economy, collectibles, wellness, fitness, right? And was like, there's no real media outlet or a niche spot to get the conversations with the entrepreneurs, the founders, the executives, the investors in sports. Everything is very news focused. It's very, let's tailor to the fan. And I said, Profluence, we're going to start as, let's go put the best content around why cricket's interesting, for example, or what's happening in India sports. And it built our relationship base. It really built the deal flow, and then just started building other verticals off of it, which the next partnered with a 30-year veteran in the private equity space. We launched Profluence Capital, have made 9 investments, like I said, there on the sports IP and sports tech side. And then recently, a month ago, launched the Profluence Plus community, which is our incubator type model of bringing, we have over nearing 200 members now. And it's bringing in these founders, and you have the networking, we have the panels, we have deeper content, we have all the lists, and we call it like a build a box for any founder in sport, but a founder in sport can be a founder of a VC firm, a founder of a consulting firm, a founder of a PR firm, a lawyer, whatever. So we have a really nice mix, and the results coming out of that are incredible. And we just had our first full flywheel happen with this company called League of Play. They're running these YouTube Gen Z type sports series, leveraging social media stars. It's really interesting. But we had gotten in contact with them through the media. Hank, the founder, joined the community. We started seeing what he was doing, making some connections, and then we just wrote them a check to join as partners on the equity side. And then we're going to push them back through the community, promote them through the media. And so it was our first full one, and we're really excited to announce that and hopefully have many, many more as we build this ecosystem at Profluence.
Interesting. A lot of questions there. I think like number one is, how do you go from collegiate athlete to understanding some of these basics around like the SEO game, socials, etc., like building up, how do you drive awareness? How did you learn that? Were you self-taught? Was that something you picked up in college, or just kind of like going down rabbit holes and then, and picking that up? Because obviously that's a big root of this ecosystem now that you've been building, right? So it's like taking bets, investing into things that you have a hypothesis around, right? That can ultimately grow and scale. And then you're also involved in that growth and scale part of it for those investments, right? So it totally makes sense. It's like a mini private equity fund.
Yes. So, and it's a good question. So a lot of it has been self-learning
Yeah.
from the degree of this is really interesting. I don't need to be a top expert. I don't need to be able to go and sell an SEO service to other people. I don't need to be that good, but I need to be good enough to do it on ourselves, teach interns and at the basics. And so I've also never been afraid to spend money to hire consultants or hire freelancers or hire people that are experts, but I never just like hire them and say, get it done. I very much try to do it side by side and learn and how they think about it. And so I'll still probably hire them again. You know, the people that build our websites, so they've built every one. I could go build it. I won't do it as good, but I know enough to be able to hire and know who's good. So to me, it really is a lot of self-learning. At BU, I had I had a finance and real estate degree, a lot of great finance and real estate courses. A lot of my friends in traditional investment banking, it's probably very helpful and useful. But to me, Boston U, incredible school, but it really just opened to diversity of people from all over the world in one classroom. And then really just the networking and alumni off of that. And several of our LPs in our fund, even our Boston U alums or even Boston U athletics, former players. So
Got
it's a big membership, honestly. Colleges to me a lot. You gotta really go learn. You can have YouTube, you have all this stuff, and then just apply it.
Yeah, interesting. So it's almost like, so I feel like you took the best assets out of, or learnings out of college, from the relationship level and then the alumni level, but the whole implementation and execution was just out of your own initiative, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I remember sitting in a marketing class going, this one, and this was at the time I was building the college sports publication. I remember going, they're talking about SEO and unpaid. And I go like, this is so big. Like, this isn't like you couldn't like, go apply this. Like, if I was gonna hire, I wouldn't hire anyone from this class
Yeah,
because it was so basic. Which it's how it has to start. But like, if you really want to do it, it's a lot different when you're bringing some money in from a website and you're like, oh wow, like this article went crazy. Like, why did that SEO work? So it's very much like anything, education and awareness, but then applying it and really trying to learn it. And then you bring in those other experts. That's where I've gotten the most. And I always try to do that and align with people. Like I know what I'm good at, but I want to just bring other really smart people around to enhance. And that can be on all different levels, from sales all the way to as niche as we have people that they know everything about collectibles. So if we're looking at a company, it's like, well, I know I'm going to talk to this person about their thoughts.
yeah, interesting. I want to talk about kind of like the investment side of things. So you talked about like how you now, and we can go into community too, and all these different aspects of driving awareness for how you're going to actually grow the investments. But how did you, how do you guys determine what you guys are going to invest into, right? Like you talked about like hypothesis. and then seeing what that looks like and how that translates, and then how that ultimately works out for you, in terms of like maybe identifying the different opportunities. But yeah, is there any like there's so much that goes through that lens of just like sports that you're talking about, right? And there's so many layers to it. How do you identify which layers you want to play in?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we've nailed it down to the two categories of we say sports IP. So that can be teams, leagues, women's sports fits under that. That can be agencies, that can be events. We've even invested in a racket sports event. There's a lot that fits on that side. And then sports tech, which again we've said is very broad and can encompass a lot. And so we very much go, can sports as a market enhance this company? Maybe this company started in sports and now they can go to other verticals. That's super interesting. Or maybe the reverse, they started in fitness and they're trying to get into sports. Look at a Whoop and what they did, right? They went for athletes in sports and then they took it to the whole general population. So those are the two main categories we operate in. We try to, internally we have percentages and things we want of how much of the first fund and portfolio should be on the IP side, and what size checks those are, and what stages. We follow a barbell strategy, so some of our investments are a little bit later stage than we would typically over a long period of time look at, just because we're trying to create liquidity quicker. um, because ultimately, we want Profluence, especially, I mean, it will encompass as a whole brand, but especially on the investment side, because that's what I love. Like, I love, my personality is, if you were to tell me just sell like one product all day or sit in an office and do Excel, it wouldn't work because I just get bored with that. So this setup is also just the perfect setup for me. Of I get a little bit of different things every day. I get to review some decks. I get to help some portfolio companies. I get to create some content on the media side. I get to go on podcasts, and I get to do a little bit of everything, but it all is pushing towards the right thing. So it also was probably one of the only things I could do is live in this world. And I love it. So over the long term, we want Profluence to be similar to how Nike is. When you go, oh, what's the best? When you think of top sports apparel brands, you go, oh, Nike. It's that, it's just that brand, right? I want Profluence to be that sort of brand on the sports business side. So again, that can encompass the media, the community investing, and who knows what else shoots off over time.
Yeah,
Yeah, you just start to see, even with some of these assets, like the real estate game, the stadium game, there's a lot of cool areas you can go, but really trying to focus and nail down where we are currently.
interesting. Um, yeah, I've been thinking about some of the companies that I've worked with that are in the sports game. One that kind of just came up and some top of mind is like they just signed like SoFi Stadium. They work with stadiums essentially,
Okay.
on improving guest experiences. And so they have a digital component, hardware device, as well as like a software component to it that helps to do that. But interesting space nonetheless. Interesting people within the space too.
Yeah, and
Uh,
the only thing I'll add to that is if you combine sports and entertainment together, which really they should be, it's the third largest industry in the world. So a lot of people think sports is this niche, or it's very large, especially when you can put things around it, right? So sometimes there's other firms that'll be like, oh, we're play and site, and it's this sports tech media ecosystem, which we said is a wedge to a lot of other things. That's where we like to operate in, which is a very large and growing space.
yeah. I have a quick kind of like off topic question, before I kind of go into more how you're leveraging community. But so I think one new sport we've seen kind of grow really rapidly has been like pickleball, or and like and
Mhm.
leagues coming out of that, right? How like what is your, just, I guess there's your perspective on it, thoughts on it, how it was able to get that level of awareness and grow so quickly? Who came into that and helped to, spur up that ecosystem? Obviously, you have like a bunch of players that became really like diehard fans very, very quickly, but like I feel like the infrastructure for that sport specifically came around super fast. And in order for it to scale to the way that it has, like, so I'm just curious from a business perspective how you think about something like that.
Yeah, pickleball's interesting because I really bucket it into two categories. There's the participation side, and then there's the viewership side. So when you talk about the leagues, I mean, there's some investors that have done very well. If you bought into some of the first teams, they were between 100 and 300 grand. And now they're selling, we see those decks, we see those transactions, they're selling between 15 and 20 million.
Mhm.
Now, do I think those are good investments as a league? No, because I don't view pickleball as a viewership sport. I think it's kind of boring to watch. But I love playing pickleball. I played probably 3 times over July 4th weekend, right? And so a lot of the money, I believe, from an investment is in that real estate, is in that land, is in building these facilities, is in the apparel and the equipment and all that. So pickleball, though, ultimately driven a lot by, 2020 and the shutdowns of everything. It was a social activity outside. They transformed a lot of tennis courts and things. So there was a lot of factors into it. Funny enough, did we played pickleball in high school, and I always remember being like, this is really fun. So it was sort of interesting how there wasn't anything before, but leveraging the hotness of the game to leagues and teams is to be determined how they do. But ultimately, that industry it has a lot more growth ahead for sure. Which will
Yeah,
be interesting to see what paddle does, or padel as some people pronounce it in the US. See what
yeah,
happens to tennis as the pullback, right? There's a Novak Djokovic recently said he's worried about tennis because they're converting all these courts.
yeah.
So
Interesting. Um, and one more question on that is like, how does it go from, or in your mind, is it just a timing thing with COVID and how that happened and people wanting to get outdoors and have something to do outdoors, uh, to spur it? I feel, or I mean, or did you see something deeper in it around socials, around, I guess there is a love for the game, it's a fun game to play. Um, and maybe that's the only way, given like the accessibility of information now, and being able to leverage socials of like that can spur, it can create that virality for a
mhm.
sport, whereas historically a brand new, something entering into a new genre, or creating a new league or just the idea of something new would have a lot more difficulty in previous decades. um can you speak about that in terms of like how something like that gets the level of awareness that it got?
Yeah, there was a good run where we had a handful of athletes and celebrities, buying teams, or you're seeing them
Uh,
playing, and so they did a great job of that, of same model everyone's used throughout history, right? Bring an athlete, bring a entertainer, celebrity, and these are running commercials now on social media for pickleball. But I think that was more on the commercialization side. Interesting, just side note, a lot of people don't know this, but Coca-Cola and McDonald's, which whatever you think of it, huge companies, processed food, sugar, I mean, they grew a ton of their brands because of the Olympics over the years. Like Coca-Cola and McDonald's, which they don't the best athletes in the world. And anyway, it's interesting, but pickleball did a great job of that, of utilizing the star power. And also its accessibility, right? You could go buy a net on Amazon for, I don't know what they are, but I want to say 200, let's just say $50, and you
yeah.
could put it out in a cul-de-sac, put it in a driveway, you could draw some lines, and you can use, the paddles aren't that expensive. You can play, like, you can make it very accessible. And
Mhm.
that's why basketball's so big. It's why soccer's so big. They're very accessible. And that's what pickleball was.
Got it.
And so those two factors, you're seeing it on socials, and you can go play it very easily in your backyard. It'll grow.
Got it. Makes sense. Um, I guess the next topic I wanted to kind of switch over to, has been around, you mentioned this idea of like starting a community for founders that are in, again, loosely around sports. Um, Tell us what, I'm a big believer in community, but like, how did that idea come about? When did you guys launch it? How did you formulate it? And how does that ecosystem work for anybody that might be listening that is a sports tech founder?
So it came about, we found this big gap between the media and the investment vehicle,
Yep.
which was, if you engage with our media, so you listen to a podcast, you read a newsletter, you might like it. Maybe you use some of the info on a deck. We were seeing a lot of people raise a lot of money and do really cool stuff off our own media, which, okay, whatever, great. That's why we're doing it. But then the only other natural progression to us was you reach out because you're like, I want feedback. But really, everyone wanted capital then. But the problem is, based on our niche, there's still such a huge gap, and there's a huge unrepresented area. And there's a lot of companies we saw that are interesting, but they're just starting. So we're not going to write, because of the size of our fund and our check sizes, we're not going to go write them $1 million check. We would be on the smaller end. So even if we did, we would have to do a lot of work for them. And so we basically reverse engineered and said there's this middle gap, which is the community. One of the founders we invested in was in a different one in a different sector, and he loved it and said he got a lot out of it. And he was like, "You should definitely build this." And so now we launched it in middle of June, nearing 200 members. And then we just looked and said, okay, if people are paying, I don't know what it is, 50, $60 a month for LinkedIn. So we're like $50 a month, and we have panels and we have all the resources. Like I said, it's a build a box for sports founders. Like it's basically everything. If I came to build a company, I would need. Here's templates of how to write investor updates. Here's all 300 plus sports investors. Here's 1,000 angel investors. Here is everything you need to succeed. But on top of that, the tailored networking, and we have a couple other cool, unique things. And then now it also gave us a place to partner with other groups, because before you can't really partner with a venture firm, you can't really partner with a media company, but you can partner with this ecosystem of founders. And the case studies, like I said, we've already invested in one company. We've had two other people get investments out of it in their companies, one from an angel, one from a fund. We're starting to get a lot of interest of more investors coming in now, because it's just everything more tangible and you can see it. And we've had some really incredible case studies. And like one PR firm signed 4 clients already. So they're like, I paid for my membership like for life, and just getting on there. And so it's basically, it was also a place to centralize everything. So
Yeah.
when a founder, we'll have a founder, I was talking to the one this morning, and he's like, I need to get in front of XYZ. Do you know anyone? And it's like, normally I'd have to send like an intro email and blah, blah, blah. Well, the community feels more tight knit. I'm like, yo, just send these 2 people messages on the community, and I'll say, hey, they're gonna like, and it's actually streamlined a lot too. So into our processes, it's made easier, because we also have a private section where we keep our LPs, we keep our portfolio companies, so they can ask us things. And it's really just a more glorified version of a Slack or a WhatsApp. And you have the public side where we help everyone hopefully get to an investment degree. And then you have the private side where there's more transparency for our LPs, our founders, our advisors, everyone in one spot to go, hey, we're looking at this company. Instead of sending that email to 20 people, now everyone can comment and everyone else can see everyone else's comments. So
Yep.
it's served a lot of different functions. It's the best thing we've ever built by far. Now we don't get there without the other stuff being built, but like it's the thing I'm the most excited about, just seeing it in action over 2 weeks.
Yeah. Um, Interesting. I mean, I think I get the ROI on it. I feel like it's, you're basically putting all of your potential customers. I mean, it's not really customers for you guys, but like all your potential customers in one place and listening to the chatter so you can identify and funnel up what's actually valuable, right? I think I mean, not enough companies do that where,
And I
instead,
think it's just lonely. It's a lonely journey for a
yeah,
lot of founders, and they don't know, there's people can ask questions in there. So like, yes, this morning we had a founder go, hey, I'm creating my seed deck. Does anyone have stats on this? Boom,
yeah,
2 people. Hey, here's what you should include there. Hey, does anyone have feedback on this email I'm sending to an investor, or this so it's also like a place so you don't feel on an island. We've just seen a lot of people. I think everything's shifting. Like I believe, yeah, do I think we're innovating in sports? Of course. But I think we're really innovating on the venture side too. I think a lot of it's going to go towards this way of transparency and really like seeing here. You can see like, yo, here's our 200 people. And, we have goals and we want to get it to more. And we have some partnerships to hopefully drive a lot more. And we want to help more people. But it's, it's ultimately, I just think that's where everything's going is, don't tell me you can help me as an investor. Show me. Well,
yeah.
come in here and we can show you.
Interesting. Okay. Um, and the other question I had around that idea of community is, how do you, and maybe it's still early, but like, I guess, how are you planning for maintaining that level of engagement? Are you guys, I know you have a bunch of content. Are you sharing that or on a schedule, or how do you kind of do that? Are you taking feedback loops and then creating off of that and giving it back to the community? But
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
good question. That's the hardest part, right? So our thing is we always want to create as much value as possible. So the second you come in, we take an onboarding call with you. My partner, Scott Garber, is the best people connector I've ever and probably will ever meet in my life. And he just off the top of his head remembers everyone in every possible, it's insane. So we immediately go and connect a bunch of dots and try to help everyone. And then we have some partnerships with some groups that are more business development specialized. And so we sort of are able to take you to a bunch of different places right away and add value. So you feel like when you come in, you got your whole year's worth of value right away.
Mm,
And to show like we really want to help you. And then a lot of it is just this exclusive access to people that are really hard to get in touch with. Because of our platform, because of what we've built, we can get to a lot of people where you're not going to be able to ask them a question, but because of what we've built now, we can have them on and they can answer questions and answers for everyone. Right. And so we're able to we that's how we're doing a lot of it too, is who are people that are hard to talk to,
yeah.
hard to get to. You want their insights, right? You want to ask them questions. You want to get in front of them. It creates a more warm approach. So now then if you reach out after, they're more likely to. So those are two of the ways we're doing it, add as much value right away and then more that connection. But we use a platform called Circle, and they're building some cool tools as well to help with some things. But yeah, I mean that's gonna be a challenge and something we face. Again, we've been in the market for a little under a month, and we've had only one member churn. And we've talked to a lot of community groups when we launched, and a lot of them said 30-40% were churning right out the gate because it was just too early and it's hard to create that.
Yeah.
We've had only one. So what's that like way under 1%.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're the next big potential solution is because everyone loves our content, that's how they got there. Do we start to pull more of our content that's out public facing and free and start to pull it in more
Hmm.
internal to the community? Do I think that works? I think it works great. But you can start to limit your reach and the top pyramid in this wide breadth. So we're actively thinking through what that looks like.
Interesting. Um, Last question here as we're rounding out on time is just, you entered into the space, you talked about how this community is going to be the thing that you're leveraging for the immediate future, but um, where do you see one, I guess your company, but with Profluence, but also just you're so ingrained into sports tech and and media and that whole and whole industry or vertical specifically, but where do you see that industry and vertical going? And do any of these new technologies with AI or generative AI specifically play a role in any of this for you? Or does it not touch you guys as ingrained as some other tech companies?
Yeah, we've made two AI affiliated. I would say one is more machine learning and the other one is they have a little bit AI that they could do without it. And also in sports, there's been AI for a while. A lot of people don't know that. The video cameras that film games and all that has been in there. So sports is actually for once a little bit ahead of the curve on a technology. Usually it's been a little bit behind, which is very positive. But where I see it going is very much global. That's where we're starting to look. What's going on in Africa? What's going on in India,
Hmm.
Asia? Like where there's a lot of interesting possibilities. What does cricket look like as it comes to the US? Right? A lot of people are looking at, oh, I want to buy a European soccer team, Ryan, like a lot of people you realize even people make fun of real retail investors are very emotional and oh, they want to get GameStop at the top or Bitcoin at top or whatever it is. But it's like when you go into the private sector, I've learned pretty quick, like people chase hype just as much, but with larger sums and a lot. And so we're very much, and we're opening up our second fund here shortly to raise a larger vehicle because we think we've done a pretty good job and showed this thesis and differentiation. But the feedback has been from some groups like, oh, we can do it ourselves. We can do it. And we go, well, you're looking at European soccer. What are you looking at in paddle? What are you looking at in cricket? What about India? Like that's where we're looking. We're looking where it's going. And so that's what I think is where sports is going to be, where it's very much more global, and the Saudis are spending a lot of money. The IPL is the second most valuable league now behind the NFL and India, and all those owners have made a lot, and they're looking at America. And there's no youth cricket in America. There's only like two stadiums. There's six teams in their pro league, which was this is the second season starting in July. So yeah, I think it's more on still like sport itself than the technology. The technology will follow, but a lot of it has been there to some degree. But it'll be curious to see. I think Netflix, Amazon, Apple could shake a lot of things up in the streaming. We're going to be watching sports a lot differently in a few years, and we've seen what betting has done, AI optimizing things, hardware and wearables continue to get more advanced, and yeah, it's a fun time ahead for sports and especially everything around it.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely painted a very vivid picture around that I don't think most people even dive that deep into. But from wearables to streaming to driving that awareness to being able to see data around players to whatever, I mean, could be there's a super interesting space that you can leverage technology for in this vertical. But on that note, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. Super interesting conversation. Thanks for sharing your insights and just your area of expertise. It was very cool.
I appreciate it, Chris. Yeah, it's fun, and I like getting to share it sometimes too, because I'm used to being on in your seat and hearing everyone else's insights, and I'm like, these are always good tests for me of what do I find interesting? What do I want to talk about? So right now, you got my head spinning of a few different content angles we should touch a little deeper on. Um, so appreciate spurring some brainstorming for me here too.
Absolutely. Thank you.